The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus said to his disciples, "You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, but is thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hidden. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under the bushel basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before human beings, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
So today, we begin our 3-week preaching series, Home Alone, Loneliness in Our World Today. Now, we live in a time that is more technologically connected than ever before. We are instantly connected to the world through our cell phones, through the internet, through satellites, and whatnot. We have fallen into this expectation that if we don't know what's happening, when it's happened, or before it's happened, we are angry at our lack of connectedness. Now, being disconnected is not necessarily bad in and of itself. Yet, a great deal of research has shown that despite all of this technology, loneliness is more present in our world today than at any other point in human history. Our attention is so consumed by everything except the people around us. Now, most likely, most of us have seen people sitting together in a workplace, or in schools, or in restaurants, even in our own homes, staring at their iPods, using their cell phones, texting, tweeting, surfing the web, or doing whatever. So completely absorbed in their own thing that they don't even know what's going on with the person sitting right next to them. They are together, yet at the same time, there is a great sense of loneliness. Now, the Merriam-Webster Dictionary describes loneliness as being without company. However, while loneliness may look different to each of us, I think that we can clearly agree that the feeling of loneliness cannot simply be confined to being without company. Loneliness is an experience of alienation and isolation that is not chosen or is imposed. And it causes a void that we cannot seem to fill. Loneliness is just not being alone, but it is not being accepted. God created us to live in community so that we would be able to support one another. He did not design for us to be alone or lonely. We are meant to be in harmony with each other, with ourselves, and with God. In a sense, loneliness is caused because we lack harmony with God's plan. As a result, we feel alone in our fears, in our sorrows, and in our joys. In this message series, we will examine a threefold alienation which destroys our harmony with God's plan. We will look at our alienation from others and the importance of having reconciliation in our relationships. We will look at alienation from ourselves and learn that our ability to love and connect with others is directly associated to how we love and care for ourselves. And we'll look at our alienation from God and discover that as we place our lives in God's hands, we will see that He is always faithful and that we are not alone to provide for ourselves. Now, combating alienation requires having a right kind of heart, which means that we are placing Jesus at the center of our hearts and our lives. Now, one can experience feelings of loneliness in many different ways. Like when we send the kids off to school in the morning, when we change our jobs, when we move homes or schools, when our friends leave us, or when somebody dies. But being alone isn't always terrible. Sometimes getting away from people can bring us freedom, bring us calm, and bring us serenity. Like when we leave work at the end of the day, or we get the kids off to bed at night after a long day, or we go on a retreat. But I think loneliness is still deeper than this. One can be among several people and yet still feel an intense sense of loneliness, of being invisible, of feeling not worthy. I've seen this in students in the hallways at various schools. I've seen it in employees in the workplace. I've seen it in the elderly in long-term care facilities. I've seen it in the sick and those who have limited mobility. Some people, to avoid or ease this pain of loneliness, may turn to things like self-medicating, abusing alcohol or drugs, or gambling or pornography. This type of loneliness leads to consequences of anger, despair, and suicide. Only in dealing with our alienation and placing Jesus at the center of our hearts and lives can we fulfill the purpose that Jesus gives us in today's gospel, to be the salt of the earth and the light of the world. To help fulfill this mission as faithful disciples reaching out to all and restoring this harmony, Jesus Christ came to help us. He offers us healing and wholeness, which restores and reestablishes our relationship with God. This, consequently, makes possible right relationships among and within ourselves. Jesus' message to his followers in the Sermon on the Mount teaches us how to approach life and relationships as we come to understand how God sees us. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? You see, salt in the ancient world was a valuable commodity, and it served as a preservative and flavoring for food. Our faith strengthens us. It brings flavor and zest to our hearts. God sees us as salt and calls us to flavor our relationships, providing purpose and meaning to others. We have an opportunity to be salt and to fight loneliness through the many outreach activities that we do here at St. George, like our prayer line, or when you take the opportunity to introduce yourself at the beginning of Mass, or joining one of our Faith Mosaic groups. You are the light of the world. Let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. In the same way that this worship space and the lights that we see shine forward for those that pass by, our Christian faith should be illuminating and not held in isolation. Just as lights are put in strategic places to illumine houses and corridors and roads, God calls us to illuminate our community with the grace and the truth of the gospel. As a lantern needs fuel, we too need to be energized. And we do this by coming to Mass, partaking in the sacraments, coming to Holy Hour, which we are having this Thursday evening. And this Lent, I want to invite you to consider joining one of our Lenten Mosaic faith-sharing groups. These will be small groups that will gather together with some amazing volunteer leaders. And you will gather for a 6-week series that will give specific focus to the Word of God in your life. It is a great way, particularly if you feel alone, to be welcomed, to be accepted, and to be accompanied on your Lenten journey. In our preaching series on baggage, Father John had explained about the importance of offering and receiving forgiveness to remove that excess baggage, leading us to a freedom and restoring our harmony with God. As we continue in our Mass today, may we respond to our call to add a zest of flavor to life, to light the darkness, so that people may see God in and through us in an effort to overcome loneliness.